How do you make business problems disappear? Wrap them in bacon. For business owners, marketing execs, and anyone trying to grow your business, pump your profits, and make more while doing less, welcome to Bacon Wrapped Business with Brad Costanzo. Sizzling hot business advice guaranteed to make you fat. Profits? Every week our chefs will serve you proven recipes for ramping up your revenue. Now here's your host, Brad Costanzo.
Okay, so in just a few moments, I'm going to bring on Bond Halbert. Bond is he's the son of marketing, copywriting legend Gary Halbert, who is one of the foremost legends in the entire business. That he's been copied, he's been swiped, he's been studied, and it is somebody that if you've never heard of Gary Halbert, you're definitely going to want to listen closely to this and to Bond, and you're going to want to check out some of the resources on the show, because if you have any business that is in the business of persuading people to buy your stuff, there was really nobody better at it than the late, great Gary Halbert. And I'm very honored to have his son, Bond, on the show today. Bond, are you with me, buddy?
Yes, I am. And
Cool.
You got to excuse me if you hear the landscaper outside, but that's something I can't control at the moment.
That's quite all right. I like it. Well, so as I mentioned, in the introduction, Bond, you walk around with a very famous last name in marketing circles, of course, outside of the world of especially direct response marketing and copywriting, etc. A lot of people may not, know who you are, but your name is somewhat royalty in a lot of marketing circles. And, your dad was really known for his copywriting expertise and some of the most amazing direct response letters, and campaigns, and promotions. And I want you to tell me a little bit, or actually tell the audience a little bit, because I'm pretty familiar with, the legend that your father was, about some of the accomplishments. But then I want to dive right in, because this really isn't as much about your dad. I want to get into kind of, you as well, and some of the things that you've soaked up and learned from him, and how you've applied it and are applying it right now, along with some of the cool things you're working on, as it applies to your father in the audio series. But what was it like to grow up with a guy who really broke records in this business, but also the circle of friends and influences that I'm sure you've been privy to from an early age?
Well, I was definitely privy to the circle of influences that are now, considered to be the legends of marketing. Not only was my dad, welcomed in those circles, but he specifically took me to go meet with them and learn, and he would tell me on the way to these meetings, this is what I want to accomplish, and then we would go through the meeting. I would be there to experience it, and on the way, he'd give me his assessment of what went on. So he basically was also teaching me how he thought, and he singled me out to do this. So I really started learning marketing and copywriting from an age of about 10 on. And then everybody knows that he wrote a very famous series of letters to me teaching me marketing, which is like the only proof I had that I had this early education.
Are those the Boron letters?
Yes. Nice. And I was 15 when he wrote those. And I had already been being mentored for a while, and I was already, being a protege who's really, like his first. And he would, but let me tell you I'll give you some stuff I haven't explained to other people before publicly. I'd heard the other day, Sam Markowitz, a good friend of mine, was talking about my father and saying that he was pretty much a social scientist, where he would go around and try little things with people and see what would get them excited, what would motivate them, what would anger them. I mean, he just played with people, not in a mean-spirited way. He really wasn't cruel.
You want to find out what makes them tick.
Absolutely. And he would, but what made him a big success is, he was not only willing to try these creative things, but it was his willingness to get back up and keep doing it even when stuff didn't work. So what this meant for me personally was he was really willing to push the envelope. And so this is my father. Now, I'm going to take you back into I think it was like 1990 or early 80s. No, late 80s. My dad, this is back before the internet, my dad takes out a full page ad to run a personal ad looking for a girlfriend.
I remember reading this. This is great.
Okay, now it's a fantastic ad that's filled with all kinds of great humor, and it says it's so popular. Everybody, people, read it. It's actually read and inside the audio series that we're going to mention later. But this is out imagine in your local paper in the 1980s when the only people who ever run tiny little personal ads are all considered to be social pariahs and losers, right?
Right.
And here's my dad with his picture and actually no, I'm trying to remember if the picture's on it, but he runs this full page ad, and it's so hilarious and thought provoking that the guys on the radio stations are calling him up that morning and reading excerpts of the ad to their audience, and into calling him up, and he calls in and they're interviewing him and stuff, and I'm like, 16. It's just the most embarrassing thing in the world to me, right?
Yeah.
And so, but that's really what it was. My father was doing all this social experimentation, and you would have these things that would turn out to be proudful. But here's the takeaway from that, the financial takeaway and marketing takeaway. You start to learn that what his genius was, what made him considered to be one of the greatest of all time, the reason his copy is copied more than other people's, is because he was willing to push the envelope and try different stuff and keep, tinkering. It was his attitude of it was creativeness to create that cool kind of stuff, but it was also his willingness to do it.
Okay, now I'm going to break away from the recording with Bond here just for a few minutes because during the interview we lost a few minutes of audio, and I just wanted to interject so that we can pick up where we left off. Now, Bond is about to talk about his newest and most exciting project. You see, Gary Halbert's greatest living legacy, besides his sons and students who carry on his work, is something that he created called the Gary Halbert Letter. It's a collection of newsletters that are available to read for free online at thegaryhalbertletter.com. It's one of the best educations in all marketing and has inspired thousands of people, including me. I seriously encourage you to go read every single one of these that you can. Now, recently, Bond and his brother Kevin embarked on a really cool project to see if they could enlist the world's greatest copywriters to record themselves, each taking a letter, and not only reading that letter and recording it, but offering their own perspective on the lesson that Gary shared. And these are copywriters and marketing experts like Dan Kennedy and Gary Bencivenga, etc. And you'll hear Bond talk all about that here in just a moment. Now, this is called the Gary Halbert Letters All-Star Audio Series, and it's available at thegaryhalbertletters.com/stars. I highly recommend you check it out after the episode, and there will be a link in the show notes. Now, Bond had just introduced the concept on the show, and the audio went out on us. I mean, such is the nature of home podcasting, right? But we're about to pick up here in just a second, and he's going to tell you how he and his brother started this project and where it's going next. So let's jump back in with Bond.
I was doing what I call a project exercise, where it helps me refocus my energies because I list all the different projects I could do and I put them through a formula with these variables and it tells me exactly which one I should be working. And I've been doing this, and then I remembered the project and I put it in there and it shot right to the top. It was like, you shouldn't be doing anything but this first. It's evergreen. It's, the probability of success is 100%. You can get it done and all this. So I decided, and fortunately, everybody started doing podcasts. So I knew that a lot of these guys had recording equipment and were set up to do that. So Kevin and I just said, let's mail a whole bunch of people and hope we get half of them back. We got way more than half of them back, and what we got back was incredible. And when we got Gary Bencivenga coming out of retirement. To read one of my dad's letters and add commentary to it, it was fantastic. So we threw in a letter. The letter read by Scott Haynes is actually a letter, so it was only put out in the print version. And because sometimes my dad would, maybe give a recommendation that he was no longer willing to make or something like that. And that's why a letter wouldn't get reposted, or he felt that maybe it said it better in a different letter or something like that. But there were some unposted letters that were really good. And we decided to throw that one in there. So people who don't even like audio, the audio version, and people who don't want to hear from anybody and they're just Gary only fans have something. And of course, all of us normal people who want to hear Bencivenga and Dan Kennedy and Carlton, and David Deutsch and David Garfinkel and Schramko and Ed Dale and all these people, reading the letters. really got a treat. And we have got nothing but rave reviews back about, from people who've listened to them. They pop them in and get addicted.
Yeah, I'm going to be listening to them right away. So that's awesome. So to kind of sum that product up, you've got the Gary Halbert letter read by the all-stars of copywriting and marketing in their own voice, but reading your dad and then adding their commentary to it. I mean, that alone is so powerful, because I guarantee they're finding the nuances and the little things that they took away from it. Like, yeah, if you're learning from Gary Bencivenga, if you're learning from Dan Kennedy or anybody else, these are all people who've been inspired and influenced or taught by your dad. It's so great to hear, the genesis of, some of their marketing ideas.
They turned around and, we have a top copywriter himself who was our intro man, Kevin Rogers. And he was the only other guy besides Kevin and I that was privy to the recordings, because we had to make him, so he could, figure out what he wanted to write or say for intros, because we gave him a lot of leeway. He's just fantastic. Any case, so he writes back to me and says, these letters, it's like experiencing the whole thing all new over again, because as they explain what their take from the letter was, you have a whole new take on the letter, and you see everything in a different light because you see it from a different perspective. And, some of the guys shared stories that give you more in-depth understanding of my dad and his personality. Other people added, a bunch of lessons and translated how this, this lesson, they put it to use in their marketing today. What the input that came back was kind of all over the map. And so it's kind of like a great grab bag as well, because you don't know if you're just going to be hearing a funny story or if you're going to get some really incredible, marketing tactics and tips added, or a new insight, or, brand new way of looking at things. It is the only marketing or copy related product I've ever, when I started listening to it, that ever gave me goosebumps.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
I've been around copywriters and copywriting material since for over 35 years now. I am, pretty much done to death with people say, well, you take up my copywriting system. Like, are you kidding me? You want me to spend 6 hours looking for the one or two thing that you might say that I don't know that's different?
Yeah.
No, and it's not that they don't have different stuff. They do. It's just that I have seen so many, I have to go through a lot. And so I still do find great stuff in, that I don't know in other people's material. It's just that I have to go through so much of it. Not true with this one. This is one where, I've never been this excited about any copywriting or marketing related product ever. And I'm very, very, very proud that, I'm part of the team that brought it out and pulled it together.
Oh, for sure. And the funny part is you've grown up with these letters. This is not new to you, but it's I guess revisiting it in a way and with the nuances of everybody else. That's really cool that you can take something you're really super familiar with and get something brand new out of it again.
This is the only way we found out that you could actually improve the Gary Halbert letter.
Yeah.
You leave it alone and you just add to it. And in some cases, like even Joe Sugarman even disagreed with my dad on a point or two, which is great because it shows you how candid and free and open these guys are. And they're surprisingly, they're just doing it to honor our father. So it's not like a pitch every single track or anything. There is none. Maybe at the end they'll tell you how you can get a hold of them, but that, everybody did this and came out to honor what my dad gave to the copywriting community. And, so, we're just glad to be a part of it. And I always joke, I say it's 13 of the world's greatest marketers and copywriters and me, because these guys are just, they're so fantastic and so great. And, if I was creating my dream team,
that would be it. Yeah.
These guys would be on it. But the other thing I want to point out, this is just the beginning. And this is really important because, if you haven't seen your favorite copywriters that we're intending to invite that don't even know they're on my list to invite. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot. What we wanted to first do is make sure this batch was a hit, and it is. And we wanted to make sure that, it was very well received, which it was. or excuse me, which it still is. And, then I have a batch of copywriters on deck that I just need to send letters to now that I know that it works. And now I'm going to start sending out invitations to people who, some of the people, I don't even know them. I've never met them or worked with them, but, because of their work is so good, they're getting an invite. And that's the other thing. Back to, being about the consumer. There are people on here I would love to invite that are, that are professionals in their market and very good. It's just that if I can think of somebody who's better at this or knows more and can add better commentary or more for the consumer, because I don't need, this thing will sell itself.
Yeah.
You could throw in a bad commentary. As long as you're reading a Gary Halbert letter, it's going to work. And, people are going to buy your album just because, you got Kennedy or Carlton or Benzavinga or Michael Gerber. We got Michael Gerber.
Oh, wow. Yeah. From the E-Myth.
Yeah. So, I mean, so it's about making it as best as it can possibly be for the person who puts that disc in, puts it on their iPod or puts the disc in the car. And,
and that's one of the ways to get it is, and I'm not wrapping up the conversation yet, but I definitely want to give people when they're like, crap, how do I get this right now? You can get it from the iTunes store. Is that correct?
Well, we made it available 2 places. This is one of those learning curves. We found out that not everybody's on iTunes.
Oh, yeah.
So, but first you can go to iTunes, and it's not a podcast. It's under music and spoken word, but you just type in the Gary Halbert letters, and you will see all of it. Now, there's 2 albums. They have a similar cover. At last minute, we didn't know this. Otherwise, we would do it. The future versions will just have a different color background. Yeah. But buy part 1 and 2. And if you do that, you can also buy them straight away and get the portal to it at thegaryhalbertletter.com. You'll see where to do it there. And if you buy both the part 1 and part 2, then that will, and you go through my brother's convoluted bonus section, that will entitle you to get a full copy of the other unreleased Gary Halbert letter called Tugboats.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so once if you get both, you actually get 2 unposted. They were only published to a few people when it was in the print version. And then also we add bonuses to that. Jay Abraham just gave us a bunch of content. He's going to allow us to give it away as bonuses to people who buy as well. So, as we add bonuses to that bonus page, anybody who's ever bought in the past will be entitled to them. So do that. Now, if you do not like iTunes because they charge you twice as much when you're in Australia or you have an Android phone, you want to go to halbertising.com with an S. HALBERTISING. .com. And that's where you can just download it direct from our site and, without going through iTunes.
Nice. And I'm definitely going to put links on the show notes and, on the website so you folks can go get it. And I definitely encourage you to. I'm going to be listening to these. I know what I'm going to, this is going to be my drive time, entertainment from now on, or at least for a while until I get through them. But, I want to digress over to another topic real quick. And you had mentioned, right before we jumped on the phone, how one of the things your dad, he's known for copywriting and whatnot, but what he always thought was the most important thing, the thing that he felt biggest about, and you agreed as well, is the big idea. And I'd love for you to explain a little bit more to the audience about the importance of the big idea and your concept, because the big idea is kind of a nebulous term. What does it mean to you? How can people use that in their own business?
Okay, it's pretty simple concept. I'm going to give a lesson that my dad gave because, I sat there and watched my dad give the original lesson to me and then refine it after years and years. And he just got these lessons down to such a degree that you really can't improve upon it. But here's in essence what it is. People would come to my dad and try and learn copywriting, and he would give them a wordsmithing lesson and tell them, how to begin their copy or how to close and stuff like that. And pretty quickly when they felt like, okay, I'm getting some of that, he would start to teach them what was important. And what was important was not that, it was the big idea. In fact, since I started the project, I had my choice of letter. I could choose any letter I wanted for my participation in the project, and the one I chose was the big idea. I feel that that's the most important lesson my father taught. Now, there are other ones that he put it so well and creatively, people understood it so good that the lesson became more famous, okay? But that was the lesson that I took to heart the most, and it was basically this. Your message in the copywriting is two separate things. Your message is, the big idea is in your offer, your unique hooks and in your ideas and your spin and things like that. But it's not actually the way that you word it that counts as much as the message itself. And so the example my dad would like to give is, imagine a guy, his wife is pregnant. And he's really excited about this. And so he's got a special cell phone just to be called for that. And he's even using an old school pager. And he has everybody in office and all of his secretary and assistants know that they're supposed to page him right away if there's any news on the front of his wife having kids. And his mother-in-law's got all the numbers of every place that they're supposed to call, and to find so that he can be found 24 hours a day. And he's sitting in a boardroom meeting, but the baby, unbeknownst to him, the baby was born. Okay, or he became a new dad, and the assistant comes bursting into the room, and the assistant, he says, hey, guess what? Your wife just had twins, or hey, hey, buddy, your wife gave birth to 2 kids, or, you're twice a father. It doesn't make a difference how he puts that. What's the news is what's going to get him to stand up and go hurrah and shake it up. So it's the big idea. It's the concept that is actually the most, the message and the offer are far more important than worrying about the exact way that you word things. One of the hardest things that newbie writers learn to do is write things and keep writing, and not to try and rephrase and reword the last sentence over and over again. Because you just get stuck there doing that. But as you learn to write copy, you go, okay, I'm just going to keep writing and getting that message out the way that I would speak it and the way that I would say it. And then I'll come back and edit it and smooth it out and do all of the other good stuff. And like I said from the beginning, all your power in your copywriting comes from the research and knowledge. That's where the big idea comes from. And the example I like to give is, look at Domino's Pizza. They understood that their market is sick and tired of not knowing if their pizza's coming in 15 minutes or 45 minutes. So they started the campaign, 30 minutes or it's free, right? And they could have said half an hour or it's on us. Under 30 minutes or you get it for free. They could have worded that any way that they wanted to. It didn't really make as much of a difference as the creative offer these guys made, right? That was the big idea that made the entire company what it is. They don't do it anymore, but that campaign built Domino's.
Yeah.
Pizza, and it was the big idea, and the big idea came from the research and understanding the market. Now, the professionalism, the talent comes in taking all that info and that research and being able to see a really good spin or a hook. Like, for example, I did the boron letters. I wanted to promote them one time to my list. So I wrote an email, and the subject line was, "Thank God my dad went to prison." Right? And then I said, I explained, look, my dad was teaching me marketing early on. And if it wasn't for these letters, I wouldn't have proof of this incredible education I got so early in life. So I tied it in, and then I told them all about the letters and promoted the boron letters. It was, that opening rate on that was really insanely high.
I imagine.
And it was creative, right? But it was here was the big idea. It was that spin on it, right? It was that. Now I could have reworded and played around with the best wording I could on the inside. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But it really wouldn't have changed the overall effect that campaign had. And so the talent will come in taking that information and all that stuff and coming up with a really cool new twist and hook. And you can just, like I said, like we're going back to what we said, if you're newer and you're just working on your business, you can borrow a hook from that you've seen elsewhere.
Yeah. So let's say I was sitting down and I was coming up with trying to come up with a big idea for a new product that I'm coming out with, and I'm sitting there, pen in hand, paper on the desk, and I'm trying to begin to formulate the big idea. Do you have a rule of thumb or general formula that you start off with in most cases in order to begin the process of finding a big idea? Because, I mean, that can take years to be really proficient at, but is there a way for somebody who's kind of just starting out to say, okay, this is where I'm going to look for my big idea?
Okay, I will give you some tips and I will give you some guidelines. And the one thing I do want to say, though, is it's kind of like, I don't mean to sound egotistical at all, but I grew up with my focus being the big idea.
Yeah.
Because I sat there for years listening to people say, hey, Gary, how would you promote this? And I would say, okay, he's going to say this or that. And I would eventually become the best in the world at predicting what he would say. And far better than anyone else because I knew him and the way he thought, and it was so in depth. But when it came to big ideas and seeing things, it comes, because I started that so early, it's kind of like asking Michael Jackson, how do you come up with beats to your music? Because it's like, after a while it became so natural, it was hard for me to answer this question, but I have figured out ways to help answer it.
Cool.
Okay, one is get off your desk. That is the last place you're going to discover a marketing idea or have a brilliant brainstorm. You're better off taking a shower. You're even far better off going for a walk and getting your, exercising and all that. My dad would train people to take all your research in, suck it all up, absorb it, and then try and forget about it. Go do your laundry, go boating, go do something else.
Let your subconscious work on it.
Absolutely.
Real quickly, when you just said the shower thing, because that's, like a lot of people, that's where I do my best brainstorming, and I bought the coolest little shower gadget. It's called Aqua Notes.
Brilliant.
Have you ever heard of this?
But I can tell you, just from the name's good enough, I know exactly what it does.
Go ahead. And it looks like it looks like a Post-it pad, like a big Post-it pad, and a pencil. But the pencil writes perfectly under the water. It erases. It is amazing. And then you can peel them off, dries super quick, take it with you. Yeah, you can buy them on Amazon. Aqua Notes. It was like the coolest invention ever. Anyway.
But it's absolutely true because in the shower, you're distracted enough, but you're not so, you're not going to have a great, brilliant idea in a brainstorm in the middle of a really exciting, fast action paced movie. Right? So the other thing I'd like to add or clarify is that you should do something that distracts you but allows you to think, like walking along the beach. The other thing that I would say is there's a little cheat you can do, which is look for them in other industries. Because, see, in direct marketing, we could, I use this example all the time. If I created a campaign called The Wealthy Bastard, that's just a ripoff of The Rich Jerk, right?
Yep.
Okay, so, and you see people doing that kind of thing, and it doesn't have that unique flavor to it anymore. When the guy's just like, "Look, I'm a proud prick."
Yeah, exactly.
And I still see people doing it now, but it's not getting the traction that the Rich Jerk did. And but if you turned around and you take some of the things that you see in other campaigns or in other medias and you start applying it, you start to see things, and it opens up a world that of like goodies. It's like that you can pick off of like fruit off of a tree. So if I'm driving in the radio, and I hear on the radio, I heard some advertisement, or not an advertisement. It was actually like a commentary, or the guy was speaking. It wasn't an ad, and the guy said, it's better than free cash. And I was like, that line's great. I love it. And I'm like, I can use better than free cash, because what's better than free cash? Giving you something that just automatically helps you make cash, right?
Yep.
And so that I incorporated into something. And you see that, but with hooks and big ideas, it's a similar thing. So for example, let's go with the 30 minutes or less, or it's free. What if you could turn around and say, look, in my industry, copywriting, a lot of people, they don't want to wait. They want to know when the piece is done and you have to, deliver and stuff. I'll have your copy camera ready in 2 weeks, or it's free.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm not saying that's an example I give in my commentary, but it's not the perfect hook, but it certainly sounds a lot more unique and better and something interesting than the stuff that you're hearing everybody else redo. And everybody else is doing the same thing. Hey, I just got 3 spaces left in my group, or just opened up.
Yeah.
They're all identical. How about pick up something that somebody else did? How about, go get our space was, you can charity auction off one of the spaces in your mastermind group, or we opened it up just for that reason because half the money's going to this charity. Give a different hook, a different angle that's, from something else that you saw. That's a good way to borrow it without, and the other thing is it's not going to really upset the other person that you've borrowed it from. The Domino's is going to get very mad when you start doing the half an hour delivery of their pizza or it's free. They don't care about it if it's a book. Right?
Yeah, you're not even doing it with food. You're not doing it there. I love doing cross-industry brainstorming and doing exactly that. Like, I get a lot of my ideas from doing the exact same thing.
I get pulled in as an idea guy in masterminds all the time and paid to do them. And I'll tell you, if you're in business, you should have two different kinds of mastermind groups to be in. One should be everybody who's in the exact same business you are, because the answers to problems that you are already going through right now. Somebody in there has figured out, how to get a good merchant account that's stable. Somebody in there has figured out, how to target the local market better than the international market. These people have figured out solutions to problems you have. But the other group you want to be in is in a group of people where nobody's in the same industry, because they will share ideas that are brilliant and great and working and, proven to have some kind of power that the other people in your industry are not even paying attention to. And so you want to join, you want to have, I think it's more important to have, to be in those two types of groups and understand those two relationships. Because, when you're, like I said, when you're in a group with everybody's, in the same business and everything, nobody wants to share the super big idea that's making them the dominant leader.
Yeah, it's
competitors, but they will share I solved this by doing that.
It's funny. I was having this conversation with somebody 2 days ago about masterminds, and we were talking about exactly that. And we were talking about, there's very niche or very focused masterminds where, I was recently invited to one that it was just for people like information marketers in the personal development niche, or folks in the real estate investment niche. Just they have all real estate investors. A friend of mine runs the Collective Genius, and it's meets 4 times a year, and it's all real estate investors doing big deals, and that's great because they get, exactly like you said, they get the information that is very, very pertinent to them, but unless they're in something else, they're only going to get that narrow sliver. They're not going to be able to get those, strikes of lightning.
The thinking out of the box comes from masterminding with different types of people.
You're right.
Thinking out of the box comes from traveling and going outside the norm. Yeah. And it goes from experimenting and throwing stuff against the wall.
It does.
That's a big, big key.
Yeah, one of my favorite books is, you can get it on Amazon. It's called Borrowing Brilliance. And it's like a 6-step process on how to, you're really combining the ideas of others in order to solve your problems. But he goes through a 6-step process. I don't remember the 6 steps off the top of my head, but it really is, okay, this is the challenge I'm trying to have. Well, who else and what other industry may be having that challenge? And who else and what other industry may have this other solution? How can you mix, match, combine? And he's like, so many companies, so many major brands have innovated by borrowing brilliance. Everybody from Apple, Microsoft, you name them.
But you don't stand out when you borrow from your competitor's brilliance as much as when you borrow brilliance from somewhere further off. And it's my dad, I always feel bad because my dad used to call it swipe files when he would say, take that, swipe it for your file. He was actually talking about swipe it out of the paper and stick it for your file, not swipe and steal the copy.
Yeah. Don't just swipe it and sell it. It's
well, yeah. People came to him and they would say, "Look, check this out. I swiped your copy, and I just changed the name of the business and all this." And my dad would cuss him out and say,
"Yeah."
And for good reason. No, you're just an intellectual property thief is what you're doing there. And also, again, you will not. That's going to work a lot better than. That's going to work better than I'm sitting down. I've never written it out and I don't know what I'm doing, never even been through a course, but it is never going to be as good as the original innovator of the idea. But it's unnecessary. And, what my dad was really trying to explain was, look, you inundate yourself with all these headlines and all these different closing ideas and angles and different bullets and takeaways and different orders and structures. My favorite thing is people who seeing people use one single theme with the same flow for every single thing they ever write. It's like, they're just Mad Lib copywriters, and they get a modicum of results, but they never get the massive one because, the human brain is the best spam filter, seen there, done that without you even thinking about it. It's a subconscious thing. My dad taught to get your email open, you don't want a window envelope and a bulk rate stamp or anything that was telling your human brain, the human spam filter of junk mail, that this is garbage, right? That this isn't something you want.
Yeah, it immediately knows. It immediately red flags it. That's not for me.
The minute I see a standard, and I'm not knocking them because it's a great place to begin, but a standard WSO sales letter, it's scroll all the way to the bottom to find the real price, scroll into the middle and the bullets to see what it's about.
Yep.
And that's where everybody's going. And then and I'm not against that. I still put in what it's about, subheads and bullets and things like that in the copy that I do. But I mix it up. I don't even try and look like my dad all the time. So for example, you'll notice on the sales page for the All-Star Audio Series, which is GaryHalbertLetter.com/stars, you'll see that I have the biggest titles are actually questions moved over to the left, and it's more like an article. Who is Gary Halbert? Why? What makes the audio series so special? And things like that. So that if you're already a Gary Halbert fan, you don't care about who is Gary Halbert. You scroll right down to the information you want. Mm-hmm. But it's a lot less than the It's not formatted the same way that I format most of my stuff or the way my dad formatted his stuff. And it's because, one thing I will disagree with my dad on is I don't believe there are absolutes in marketing. There are some cases where jingles were brilliant. Some of them were lame, and I did an experiment with a friend of mine, and I said, hey, I said, I'm going to give you 2 jingles and I want you to tell me what the products are for. And I said, okay, what's plop, plop, fizz, fizz?
Oh yeah, Alka-Seltzer.
Alka-Seltzer. I can't believe I ate the whole thing.
Oh, yeah, you're so right.
Okay,
I can hear it. I can see that. But I can't
you know
think of the
them
damn
both.
product.
You know them both really well, but the plop plop fizz fizz. Oh, what a relief! That jingle was worth millions of dollars to that company.
Oh yeah.
Because whenever you think about, I need, what are those tablets where people drop them and then you put it in the water and everybody goes and gets Alka-Seltzer. It's so well done. Right?
Okay,
but the other one is in your brain, but it's useless dollar-wise.
What is it? You're killing me, man.
I'd tell you that, to be honest with you, and
you don't even remember.
I actually met the guy who wrote that thing. But I can't remember if it's Tums or Alka-Seltzers. I can't remember.
Oh.
In fact, I'd have to Google it. And you know what? But I don't want to know, simply because I can still tell people to this day, I don't know.
Yeah.
But the point is, you remember the jingle, but it didn't add value to it, right? And I saw somebody else, and they got really mad at me because, David Ogilvy did this great ad. And I think it's a great ad on Rolls Royce.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
Why you would buy a Rolls Royce, and the copy, I read it and I thought the copy's really, really good. But the only reason I say I think it's good is I've never heard a single number on it. Right? I've never heard them say, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that if he could say this increased Rolls Royce's business 200% that year, he would make that claim, right?
Yeah. That's true.
When he says it's one of his greatest ads and biggest successes, there's one thing that's true. It was one of the ads that was very successful in getting him more ad accounts. Now, I'm not saying, don't send me the hate mail. I think the ad is great. Yeah. I do. But the difference between thinking an ad is great and knowing an ad is great is in the numbers you see. Right? And it's comparing that ad to what else they could have put in that paper for a Rolls Royce ad at the time. And so I remember one time I was like on a forum or something. I'm like, but how do we know this is great? Has anybody seen any numbers on it and stuff like that? And, that just, what made, it's like when you say one of those things that's makes people think of it in a new light, but in a true way that they hate.
Yeah.
They come back with you with all this anger. But the fact is, you didn't know whether or not it was a true winner or not. But I think, I looked at the copy and I was like, it's brilliantly written. There's no doubt about it. But and this is just because something goal is to get sales. Right? Your goal is to make sure that you pull in a lot more money than you invest when you're buying traffic. That's when you really have a business. That, if I get leads with this kind of target demographic and I can get them for this amount of money or less, then I can drive the traffic and they will convert to this, and this is the bottom dollar I can expect. When you build a system like that, it's about the numbers. You're in the numbers business, and the psychology is about, the proof. You have an idea, you test it, and the proof is in that number and how it comes out. So when you don't see that number, nothing means anything really. That ad was very successful for David Ogilvy. I have no doubt it was. I do not know how successful it was for Rolls-Royce. I do believe it was successful. Again, no hate mail. But it's the numbers that make the difference, and tell me the truth. And so, but again, I disagree with my dad on some things, and I don't believe that there are absolutes. And, I think plop, plop, fizz, fizz, has made a lot of people switch and choose Alka-Seltzer and choose that in the supermarket than their competitors. I don't even know they're great competitors. But I believe it's about the end result, and it's measuring that, and you find what does work. And again, back to what we were saying in the middle of this is, you find out what works, you dissect why it works, you try and replicate it. And if it replicates and it does work, you did do it right. And so when you go out and you look at other industries and, you're borrowing an idea from the auto industry to apply to your info business, it feels a lot fresher and looks a lot fresher to all the prospects, because the human body is, the human brain didn't just filter it out. They didn't say, well, I like that jingle, but I really don't care about that other message. So your brain didn't filter that out. And so it looks fresh, and it has and it's got some sort of proof that it works, because it worked as a selling technique. Now, it's not definitive proof, but it's a good indicator. So if you're going to borrow brilliance, borrow it from outside of your industry. Now, the other tip that I'm going to give you is this. Dig into your stories. I create basically a questionnaire that is who, what, where, when, why, and how, that you first ask about the client, the product, the industry, and its origins, its development, its failures, everything. So, to dig out until you find some interesting fact. You have to dig it out of clients. Now, for me, I just go through building a product and I discover stuff. Like I'm going through and putting the Gary Halbert Letter All-Star audio series together. I'm like, hey, wait a minute. This is the largest collection of copywriters I've ever seen in the world. There's a hook, right? Hey, these guys give, Kevin Rogers tells me about this, giving it a whole new dimension. It's like experiencing the first time again. I got another, I credit him and I got another hook. And so they come up like that, but I'm on the lookout or sensitive to it. When you are doing it, you need to ask these questions about your product. And then the key is to ask the same questions again about those answers. So if you say, this industry, who was it started by? Okay, this is who started the industry. It was Claude Hopkins or Thomas Hall or something. Why did he start it? Oh, okay. Well, Thomas Hall did, where did he start it? It was back in thing. When, and how? And then you find out this is when he started it. Well, why did he start it then? And you can't fill these all out. The goal is not to fill them all out. But the deeper you dig into the facts and the assets and the development and the industry and the results and the clients and their experiences and the reviews, and you dig all of this stuff out and you start applying that insane curiosity to everything, you will eventually find on some pretty unique and cool fact, right? So the other tip I gave you is for more or less like creating good offers, right? Borrowing good offers from other industries as well. This would be more for hooks and angles. The other thing I will teach people is go to the news. And, you have to apply a marketer's thing, but the news will come up with stories you would never even think about. There was I hate to say it, was a gruesome story I had just heard about a guy in New York City who offed himself in the most weird way. He wrapped a chain around a pole and then got into a convertible, wrapped the chain around himself, really? His own neck, drove. And again, I don't mean to be total. I don't live on the dark side this deeply, but
that paints a picture.
He decapitated himself this way. And I just read about it, right? I mean, like yesterday or the day before about it. That's why it was on my mind. And it's like, wow, and the, and the whole idea could then spawn this concept of a drawing. I'm not talking about a sick drawing about somebody hurting themselves or killing themselves, but a sick drawing where a guy is or not a sick drawing, but a drawing of where a guy is trying to get somewhere on his horse or driving, and his neck is still tied to a pole. And you say, does it feel like every time you're trying to get somewhere that you're just hurting yourself further, or ever get this feeling, and then you go into, this is how to keep knocking yourself. That's a great image thing, right? And by the way, I'm just ripping this off the top of my head right now. The idea is that would be a very compelling image for, to grab attention, as long as you can, hook it into something. But the point I'm trying to make is news comes up with these most unique, insane, dark side, appeal to human nature type of stories, that when you can model those as opposed to modeling the editorial of an ad, if you're real stories, you get a lot of new ideas for hooks and angles and headlines.
Right. Well, in the news, love it or hate it, that's one thing they've been, for the past 150 years or however long they've really been newspapers, is they work on angles and getting viewers and getting eyeballs and getting your attention.
I won't tell you all of them, but I put together a product one time with a friend of mine. He just recorded me explaining this, but the news sources are not all created equal. And I'll give you one that's really good. Go to the National Enquirer and go to their celebrity section.
Okay.
And you'll look at their headlines that are about their celebrities. Now, there are other sources that are better for businesses in general and different campaigns, but this one is particularly good for any businesses that are centered about a human being, a branded around a person, or even just a brand. Okay. And if you follow them, they will, they'll say something like, Jennifer Aniston's shocking summer vacation confession, right? Mm-hmm. And so, this turns into, Bon Halbert's shocking email confession, right? You get the curiosity that comes off from that. Now, that, again, I'm not looking at the site right now on my computer or anything, but, then you will add marketing techniques to it. So, for example, with subject lines, I like curiosity and some sort of I like to add numbers to everything.
Yeah.
Right. So, Bon Halbert's shocking 2014 email confessions. Confessions of his email marketing in 2014, or the 3 main confessions and stuff. And I like to take things on the dark side too, which is what the news does.
It's what they say sex sells, but really, the dark side. People have a macabre sense of curiosity, and
I'd still go with sex over the macabre, but
it's those things that get somebody's attention, and that's really the first thing you have to do. Is you have to get their attention. You have to stop them in their tracks and get them to pay attention to you before you can take them anywhere else.
And to understand that, you have to admit to yourself stuff that you don't want to admit.
Yeah.
So, for example, nobody, the truth is I could tell you the 7 breakthrough email marketing techniques I developed in 2014. Or I could tell you, the 7 incredibly shameful things I learned while I spent 2014 in prison. You want to know about what I learned in prison, and it doesn't benefit you at all.
Yeah.
The fact is, you have to understand that. So, back to that so what test we were talking about.
Right.
When you're applying that so what test, you have to that honesty helps there, because you turn around and say to yourself, well, yeah, this is what they care about more. And you have to be honest and say, look, I care about gossip. If you're on Facebook, the posts that you look in and check the most are the ones where people are fighting.
Yep.
It's just
human nature. It's the way we work.
It's the way we are. If you can admit that that's how you are. I always tell people, I said, I am not arrogant, and I'm not. I just think that everybody else is as screwed up as I am. It's the way I believe. So I don't, I have no problem saying, oh, you're going to love this because it's all gossip and dirty and salacious, because I like dirty and salacious gossip.
Yeah. But I think, most people's lives, even people that you see as probably having the most exciting lives, we all face the mundane, and usually our lives are very mundane. We go about our daily business, we do the things, and it's those things that aren't mundane. It's those things that are either shocking or, extremely curiosity-inducing, whether it has to do with sex or the macabre or something just outrageous that you've never heard of before. It's what grabs eyeballs, and you can't sell.
It's the incongruent.
Yeah.
It is what stands out. If you're on a freeway, there's two cars that you pay the most attention to. The one that's dead stopped and going 20 miles an hour while everybody's
120.
Yeah, while everybody's doing 70. It's the difference that gets the attention. It is, and so that's what it is. So, for a while, everybody's agreeing with, some guru, and then somebody comes out and wants to, bashes them, and they get a whole bunch of attention all of a sudden. Pretty soon, people pick up on that, and they go, hey, let's go, guru bashing, and then it gets so old and lame, nobody pays any attention to them.
Yep. Years ago, I had an information product in the general dating advice industry, and I was brainstorming with another friend of mine, and I came up with, I never did anything with this, but I always was trying to zag when everybody else is zigging, and came up with a hook that I thought would be fun, which is like dating advice or pickup or seduction advice, whatever, for good-looking guys who don't need it. That's general concept. Cause normally it's going, hey, listen, this will work for you if you're fat, bald, ugly, overweight, all this other stuff. I was like, well, what if we came up with one that was like, how to pick up chicks for great looking dudes? Because, and my theory there was, number one, nobody wants to admit that to themselves that they're ugly or that they're not worthy. I mean, they may feel that way, but they don't want to admit it, number one. Number two, nobody's marketing to this group of good-looking guys. And if somebody buys this, like if I don't consider myself attractive, but I buy this, it's almost like I'm getting to peer into this, or maybe I get to be considered a good-looking guy too because I'm buying it. And the whole thing is really like, just don't be a douchebag. You've already got everything else you need. Don't drop the ball. It's a one-page info product. Don't talk too much.
Well, but let me ask you this. How many of the guys who think, oh, I'm really good looking, how many of them do you think don't pick up women who are interested in it?
So that was one of my other biggest reasons, because I've got some buddies of mine who, I guess are married now, but they were really good looking guys, but better looking than myself, and, we'd go out and girls would actually approach them because they were good looking, but they had absolutely no game, for lack of a better word. They would either just talk about themselves, they would be meatheads or whatever, and they would drop the ball. More importantly, when they saw a guy, they were, I guess, vain. When they saw a guy who wasn't as attractive as them, maybe they had a balding hairline, maybe they were a little overweight, and they had a girl that they wanted, they would get pissed. It would just dig at them like, what's he got that I don't have? Oh, he must be rich. He must be this. And they took it really, really personal because they felt, I'm a really good looking guy. I should be able to get any girl. And it would be so easy to just twist the knife. In that one, like, hey, listen, you've got everything you need. You've got everything, but there's one thing you're missing. And that's what's causing all that pain. But I thought about using that as the big idea, is going after, a product for guys who consider themselves great looking simply because nobody else was doing it. And I'm
gonna agree and disagree. One, I think that particular angle is a terrible idea. Yeah.
Another reason I didn't do it, but we were talking about zigging and zagging.
Let me give you a spin on it, though. I think that might work.
Yeah.
Which is this. It's, you can't get, see, somebody might say, I think I'm good looking, or they might think I'm very smart, or I'm clever, or I'm, this or that. But it's something that, there are things that people will not admit to themselves, even though they really do believe it or think it or wish it was true. Sure. There are, for example, I use Rolex watches for these examples. If you're spending, like I did, I went out and bought a Rolex watch one time. I think it was $3,600, right?
Yep.
And if you're spending $3,600 on a watch, it's not just to know the time. It's not to make sure that the clock works. Well, in a way, you're sort of showing off. There's no doubt about that. You're also.
Yeah, I do wear a Rolex, so I'm happy to say I'm happy when people notice it. So.
Well, one of the reasons everybody picks a Rolex or it's so popular is if you're into it, you start to, people know that, nobody knows what the other watches are. You could wear $150,000 Patek Philippe and nobody's going to recognize what you've got on your wrist.
Everybody knows the little bubble on the glass.
Yeah, and they know the Submariner, was a very popular watch. And, I felt I was leaning towards the Submariner. What happened with me was I was actually looking at a Rolex watch I own that my father gave me, and I was marveling at how beautifully well made it was. And I was like, I'd really like a really nicely well made watch like this that's not all gold and a beacon. Yeah. And I wear my all gold beacon watch too because I'm proud of it. My dad gave it to me, so I went and bought the Submariner. My name being Bond, it seemed like the obvious choice. And I had a great freaking excuse, right? But the point is this. You learn in the watch industry, you don't learn to say, get this because all your friends will know that you've got money. You don't say that. What you do is you spin it in a way that says, and my dad did a great job of this. He actually wrote a newsletter about it, which is, when people see the fact that I'm wearing a Rolex, they don't try and think they can buy me for $100.
Yeah,
okay.
Very subtle difference.
Okay, it's a very subtle difference that makes all the difference in the world.
I mean, a very subtle touch. That's I think what I wanted to say. A very subtle touch that makes all the difference.
That's what the talent part is, that my dad had. And when John Carlton, I told this story the other day once, but John Carlton was, we were talking about it when I bought my Submariner, and he's like, why would you spend so much money on a watch? And I instantly came up with what I think is the very best on-the-fly piece of BS I've ever come up with, which is I turned around and I said, because having an expensive watch reminds me that my time is valuable. And I was like, oh, that should be in an ad.
I like it, yeah.
But it's, the truth of the matter is I have to recognize and realize that, the statement it makes to other people is more important. Now, the statement, there's a lot of statements it makes. Some of them are far more egotistical than my statement that I want to make. And some of them are, a lot more legitimate than the egotistical statement I might want to make. But the point is you need to understand the market and then what the true goal is and what the people will admit to themselves, what they won't admit to themselves. So if you're selling a Rolex, you have to say, look, 400 working man hours went into this, and the precision, unlike, 99% of all mechanical watches, these are accurate to within 5 seconds a day. And you don't need a battery, which won't die on you in the middle of your dive trip, or, and you create all of these excuses that the prospect can now give to his wife and his friends to defend his purchase at the bar.
Mm-hmm.
So you think, understanding the prospect on that level is going to really help, and the talent's going to help you come up with the hook and the angle of it. But I think I think when it comes down to, let's take your example of the good-looking men. If you turned around, I think you would have something if you turned around and say, how to know when a woman is hitting on you.
Yeah.
Okay. Because now I don't have to admit that I don't have to admit that I'm good looking, and even bad looking guys who aren't looking great, they eventually like them and they were just oblivious to it because they were insecure and thought nobody liked them. So you get a wider swath, but you're also attracting that group of guys because good looking guys find out later that some girl was hitting on them. And the reason is my mom taught me this. Good looking people get invited to parties and don't have to develop a personality as much as people who aren't attractive or shorter or people who feel insecure about the way they are.
That's true.
They work harder on a personality. And that's why so many pretty people are boring as hell. It's not that they're stupid. They're just boring.
They've
because
never had to develop that skill.
That character trait. Yeah, they don't have to develop that. And so, so a good looking guy who gets hit on by women is going to find out later that, oh, that girl liked you, as other people, pointed out. And one of the things they want to know is how to know if a girl actually is really into you or not, right? So even that book, How to Know If They're Into You, or he's he's just not into you. That's the angle of it. And then actually you come up with the quick solution for that. Excuse me. So the big idea of that, I actually have told somebody this one time. Somebody asked me, I forget, it might have been, anyway. One of my friends asked me, how do you tell if a girl is interested or ready to be kissed or something? I said, it's actually pretty simple. Human beings have a natural comfort zone that you have with people. So you'll find somebody's very touchy-feely and they're just touching everybody's arms when they talk to them, and they hug everybody and everybody gets a kiss and everything. And then other people are like, 3 feet is my comfort zone. If you get closer, I'll back up, right?
Yep.
When a girl is ready or open to you, she will allow that distance to close somewhat. Okay. So you can't, so if a woman is always basically standing 2 feet away from almost everybody she talks to, but she's within 6 inches, guess what? She's into you.
Yeah.
If a woman is putting her hands all over everybody, it means that you do not have a green light to start making out with her.
Yep.
And this, I don't mean, I'm speaking from the guy side. This is, of course, true with men as well, ladies. But the relationship thing.
Yeah.
And see, that's what, being a marketer is about, understanding and being a student of people. And my father was a great persuader in person, and I turned into a pretty good persuader in person. I could get people at the DMV to break rules for me and do things for me.
Right.
There were, stuff like that. And people will tell me, oh, you can schmooze anybody. Well, that's, copy is just telling people what I'm thinking or saying or would be saying if you were in front of my face.
Just understand it. You just have to understand people, what makes them tick, how to push their buttons, in what order. Yeah, I mean, it applies to both copy as well as interpersonal relationship.
And how they're different and what they care about and all this other stuff. When I put together the Gary Halbert Letter All-Star audio series, I pull out all the stops to get these guys to say yes. I put in, I give them very clear instructions that make it so that their part will be as easy as possible to fulfill. And a lot of them are just doing it to honor my dad and just because, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
Definitely loving the fact that they're getting branded next to some of the legends, and some of them love the fact, but the point is I pull out all the stops so that everybody on the series has a really good reason to do it, beyond just the normal reason. And I don't know what percentage do what, but I know that I'm doing my best to cover all the bases and go for all the angles for why, if I was one of them, I would want to do it.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Marketing is anything where marketing is anything where you getting somebody else's help or to do something is going to benefit you. So it's about human relationships. It's not just writing.
Yeah, and the more you understand the other person, the more you can empathize, put yourself in their shoes, the more you can understand how to build that persuasive argument. And it's not about manipulation, and it's not about the best marketers in the world, they're not manipulators. Some people have gotten bad names for, some pretty shady tactics in the past, but at the end of the day, like you said, it's about human nature. It's about understanding what makes them tick.
Yeah.
Giving it to them. So, a couple more questions here. Number one, when you are building because I'm always curious about this from other copywriters. I'm not a professional copywriter on my own, but I've copywritten all of my own stuff, and it's been one of the areas that I do enjoy and hate at the same time. I think all copywriters have a love-hate relationship with it. But, when you sit down to craft out copy for yourself, do you kind of have a general ritual? Do you start with bullets like I've heard some copywriters do? Do you start with the headline? I mean, obviously the big idea, if you can come up with that in the beginning. But are there any tricks of your trade personally?
I have to have the big idea in my head before.
Yeah.
I do this completely opposite of the way that my dad did it, for different reasons. My dad was actually old school. So back in the day, you had to go and have your copy or your first draft typed out by a very expensive typist.
Yeah.
And then to do revisions was lengthy, took all day to get the revision back. This is before word processors. So he learned to perfect his pitch, the entire thing in his head.
Wow.
So when he'd sit down and write a piece of copy, it required like 2 or 3 edits, right?
That's amazing.
Yeah, well, it took 30 days to perfect that pitch, and he could only work on really one masterpiece at a time. The way that I do it is I get the big idea, and I get the message of what I want to tell somebody, and the offer I want to make, and I sit down and just start writing and start pumping it out right from the very beginning. Sometimes the headline stands out. Sometimes I'm doing that without the headline, and the headline I know is going to come out like
later.
And then, so I pump out that first draft, which will look radically different from my final piece. And the bullets are something that I actually work on completely separately and add into. Now, bullets are already in my head because they're in my nugget notes, which is the whole research process. So before I sat down to write, all of those would be already rambling around in my head and those thoughts. And if one of them looked like it was a good headline, it would be the headline, and any points that they were making might be incorporated in the copy. But I just sit down there and I start writing and writing and writing, and I write it to, and I write in the, feel the rhythm and all this other stuff. And, you keep going, and then you get to the end of the piece, and then I put it in and I go through a very long formulated editing process, which will include reviewing the notes and seeing what points I may have not slipped in there, rearranging the timing of things, and I really should do a course on this, because the editing process is where all the professionalism in your copywriting comes from.
Yeah.
Amateurs will have a great piece of copy that starts off and falls apart because they don't edit in a complete pass. What they do is they start reading, and then they find an error and they correct it and go back and start reading again from the beginning. And then by the time they get to the bottom, the top has been looked at and reviewed 20 times, and the bottom has got
twice, yeah,
still got typos in it.
That's good.
So
good point.
but there's a long process and some of it's stuff that I do. I know I'm the only one that does it, and the other stuff is stuff that all the real pros do, like read their copy aloud to find the spots where it doesn't flow, and do a that hunt, and go and remove like 90% of the instances where they use the word that, and breaking up sentences, and finding a word that's of a more base level vocabulary, and all that kind of stuff. So I will write. So I will go and get my nugget notes, do my research, walk the beach, do all these things till I get the good idea, the big idea. Then I will sit down and start pounding out that copy, and I will refine it, go over it, refine it, edit, and keep doing that up until deadline time. And again, that's my process. Now, as far as my the real question I think that you're trying to ask, which everybody wants to know about, is your routine and how you get into the mode, to write. And the answer is a routine. The one thing you'll find all professional copywriters who do a good amount of work do is they have a routine. And the routine, what they start to realize is, I can't work right now. My mind isn't on fire. Why is that? How do I, cure the writer's block and all this other stuff? And there are cures for the writer blocks and quick start tricks and so forth. But the best thing is you start to realize that, my body is all affected by, the stress and getting irritated by watching the news and having it piss me off, or, the phone rings and the distractions come here, or this is when I'm tired, and, this is when I'm actually too happy, and you go happy-go-lucky, and I need to be more Machiavellian in my copy. And they just find that eventually they figure out, okay, this is the time where you can get me the best. And so right now I gave you the best time to get me mentally, which is 10 a.m. my time.
Yep.
Okay. Because that's me. John Carlton, it's the middle of the freaking night. And, you can't get him or Kevin up before, 10 or 11 in the morning. So for everybody, it's different. But what they do quickly figure out is this is the time where I can usually rely on me being in a pretty good mood. And then they start to find out how the entire rest of their week and what they're doing affects that. Okay. So now what they're doing is, I'll give you examples. I have all my mail go to a mailbox, and I give nobody who can possibly, other than a family member, nobody can call me and give me bad news. I don't give my home phone number out to, the IRS or, and I compartmentalize. On Friday, I never check my mail because, I might get some kind of message that I don't want to hear about that will ruin my weekend, and I can't do anything or get back to anybody because it's the weekend. So I don't check mail on Fridays. I plan out for when I'm going to deal with the annoying things. So I always check my mail on a Monday because Monday sucks anyway, right?
Yeah, it makes
sense. And the thing is, you get to you'll see this pattern with them. And one is they have a pattern of exercise. I go out for these long walks with my dog. Mike Morgan goes out for long bike rides, a lot of times with his wife. They'll have usually an exercise regimen, and you'll see people either talking about health and exercise, playing guitars, and these are common themes you'll see amongst all the copywriters. But what they really have in common is keeping their body in a regulated state so that they can know exactly and can rely on being in that good mood at the right time when they're probably going to need to write. So, and then they'll say, okay, and if I'm not writing copy for an ad because I don't have a client at that moment, I'm actually going to be creating content for my own products or something. It's like their creative time. And the only way that they can maintain to be sure that that's always going to be on fire at that time is a routine. So the only thing that I see common amongst all of these serious professional copywriters is they really get into their routine, and it's balanced off onto, this is when I play guitar, this is when I let it all go and go get drunk, this is when I go out to the track and jog, and they just do all of these things so that they can monitor their system. And that way they have to do less warm-up tricks. And, there are, I'll give you a couple examples. Like if, humans need a hack, and I hack my brain all the time to convince myself, to look at things the right way, or to motivate myself to move forward when I'm feeling insecure about something. But if because of my routine, I haven't this in years. But if I was just like, how do I need to get some work done, and I'm just not in the mood to work, I will pick up my laptop, throw it in my briefcase, and I will go down to a reference library. And because everybody in the library is doing reference work, we're such social creatures, I cannot be in a reference library hearing other people like working on computers and writing and doing business and stuff like that and not be in that mode.
Yeah, that's a great point. You put yourself in the place where that vibe is already kind of going, and you sink into that.
Yeah, you need to be in a creative mode. What you need to do is go hang out with a whole bunch of creative folks that are in a room of creatives.
Yeah.
That's why that works so well. Now it's more important for a comedian, because with a copywriter, you can get a routine like I did where I don't really need to do that, right?
Right.
But that hack will work for me in a pinch, and I know it's there. And there are other hacks that I have that, help you. Like one of the things I do is monitor how well my brain is working, because your brain does not work at super efficient levels all the time, in the same level all the time. You're getting me right now at a pretty good time to talk about marketing.
Great.
Friday night's probably not the best time. If just for me, other people it is. And being able to monitor and measure that, you start to see the difference. And the way that I monitor and measure that is actually with Sudoku puzzles. I can finish an evil, really super tough, rip through the Sudoku levels when my brain is on fire and all the synapses are just working really quickly. But there are times when I'll go through it and I'm like, wow, it's like my brain's in a fog and this is taking me 20, 30 minutes to do it or something like that. And I know my brain is not fired up. And so it's knowing when to quit as well. The very first, a lot of the copywriters, one thing you'll see also amongst them is a lot of them will have a similar story about how they had, they got up, the 4 things went wrong and they said, screw it, and went back to bed.
Yeah, I'm done.
Just went to the movies because they're like, I'm not on fire. I'm just going to save it till when I am.
Yeah.
But yourself is really key. In fact, the very first line in the James Bond book that my dad always quoted and remembered was, James Bond was tired. And he always, he paid attention and was aware of such facts because he knew how it affected his performance. It was something along those lines. And that was something my dad was very tapped into and that, I picked up and do as well, which is, if you're an ongoing professional copywriter that has to put out a certain amount of work and you have to rely on being in a good mood, a good writing mood often, your routine is going to become, the copywriter's family knows, don't mess with them then.
Yeah.
This is, and don't mess up their routine, even outside the copywriting window.
Yeah. No, it is. I mean, copywriting it's very, especially the professional ones who this is what, they do their primary living. It is very much an art form, just like any other performance piece or whatever. And like you said, the routine. I love the hacks. I love I mean, and the really understanding how to structure your entire week around that and knowing where you're at. Those are the hallmarks of a true professional. And I know I'm always trying to introduce new routines and new habits into my life that foster those, that high performance.
But you're also monitoring how they affect you.
Yeah.
That's the key. There's the tweaking of your routine doesn't stop. It's but what you really do is you eliminate the bad forever.
Yeah.
I turned off cable news. Just because, I don't care what side you're on it, that thing is, damaging your brain. And I don't mean it like it's making you dumb. I'm saying it's just, your mood, who turns on any cable news, and I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, who turns on any cable news and turns it off and goes, oh man, I feel a lot better now.
No, it's
not their
negativity. Yeah, but people feed, that's like I said, people feed on some of that negativity occasionally. And,
but when you can't work because of that, because you got up, you were heading off to write your copy in the morning.
Turned on the news.
It blew your mode, and instead of writing that copy, you're now ranting about something, right? And you're pounding out a rant and stuff like that. And then pretty soon you're like, okay, wait a minute, I'm not doing anything until I'm done with the copy. And then you compartmentalize it. And then when you try and experiment, now when I cut off cable news, and I did it as an experiment to see if it would improve my routine. And it did such a good job that I refused to have it in my house. And by the way, before anybody thinks I might be tacking on their cable news network, I started doing that more with regular news too. Like even the local news.
The news in general is, you can't escape it. That's but any little experiment, you monitor the results and you're trying, I think the goal of a copywriter is to get himself into the whole life routine, and only break it for those few times when you need a break in the rhythm. Yeah, I agree. And what are you, Bond, kind of switching topics as opposed to just marketing and copywriting advice, which, by the way, I mentioned at the very beginning of the show that my goal for this is always for this free podcast to never feel like it's free. You've shared some stuff in here that is absolutely worth paying for. I appreciate that, but I want to know more about what you, besides the audio series, what are you doing in your life right now? Are you writing copy for your own stuff? Are you working with clients? Are you consulting? What?
I'm one of I consult a lot, and I'm, the reason is the best use of me is to actually say, hey, I'm, like, for example, the best use is to say, here's my idea. And then me to tell you, like you shared with me your idea about good looking men, right? Yeah. And my forte is turning around and saying, no, this is how to spin it. And this is how to solve the problem. And here's how to deliver your thing. Great. And so I do quite a bit of consulting. My brother has taken on a few clients that I actually write for now, but I'm, trying to dissuade him from doing it because I really, for the most part, don't like working for clients or with clients because for a number of reasons. One, I don't like taking on the stress of making your business work as well as making my own work.
Yeah.
Because I take it very personally and I care very much, and I don't just, pump out an ad that looks very similar to everything else I wrote, hand it to you and say, good luck, Right. I do take it very personally. So, and I don't like it for that to do client work because I can be more creative, experiment. I don't have to convince you that a double your money back guarantee is a good idea. I don't have to convince you to try this or try that. I can just do my own thing and experiment and, get bored and move on to something else all the time. So I focus on doing a couple of things. One, I am a consultant, so you can, to go over your ad and tell you how to improve it and fix it, or you'd go over your business and give you, the big ideas. But one of the things I'm doing for my own type of evergreen, stuff is I'm taking what my dad taught me and then taking the stuff that I added onto it and then creating my own products and my own stuff, which is what I'm working on. So I take my dad's marketing concepts and apply it to email marketing. And I just finished putting together the elements for an email marketing course. That's basically a series of these webinars I gave. But I'm doing that with everything. So I'm I'm killing several birds with one stone by taking my dad's stuff and updating it. So I'm refreshing the value of his stuff and and helping his legacy at the same time. People then get the stuff that I add to it that is different from my dad's,
right.
That he never taught me. So there are, for example, editing tricks and, Sudoku, monitoring my brain and never did. But I still do everything my dad did. So I'm kind of and I'm teaching my daughter, by the way, copywriting, and all of these products and stuff are about teaching others to marketers, and to how to be better and make more money at what they do. And I like it that way better than client work. Now, I've done client work and built websites just to prove to myself, and successfully, just to prove to myself that it's not just running on the Halbert name,
I can do it.
So I would do so I do it, and I've saved a lot of businesses and I got all those success stories. But what I really enjoy doing is, things like what we're doing now, teaching people about marketing and teaching people new ideas and stuff that you can't really get everywhere else because, and I'm not knocking people for this. A lot of the gurus and stuff, what they will teach you is like 95%, Gary Halbert or somebody else's techniques and teachings and stuff like that, reformatted. And it's information that is true and good.
Yep.
That your headlines need curiosity and benefit, things that if you're missing that, you would be missing an element. But they're basing it on one or two kind of new ideas that they had, right? Is the nugget of newness that they build it all around. I get those a lot. I take, just the other day when I threw up the issue of the Gary Halbert letter and said, I'm going to, raffle this off to everybody who spreads the link, knowing that people would read the first page and want to read the rest of the letter. So they would go to the link to the letter. The link to the letter actually has a small pitch at the bottom, but it drives the traffic to the site, which is, what I wanted to do, getting the action I want. You're doing those, hey, I got this cute little idea and I'm going to try this. And hey, I got this cute little idea and trying that, like what I did with the Amazon books and stuff. That is what I'm particularly good at. And so I like to play with my own way. And one of the tips I'll give you and everybody else, it's a learning tip. When you learn somebody or something and somebody tells you something, go try it immediately. Don't try and go through an entire course. Go through the first thing you learn that's new or different that you think might be of use. Go put it into action and just on a small scale, see if that works and it has any effect. If it does work, that lesson will be burned into your brain. If it doesn't work, then you're not going to spend a lot of time, building up this campaign and preparing all summer for your big Pinterest launch,
Exactly.
And then finding out there's no money there for you. So what you want to do is, but anyway, back to the original question. What I'm doing now is updating my dad's stuff and trying to, continue making the Halbert legacy an institution where people can continue to learn direct marketing advice for really cheap. That's why the audio series is so inexpensive. And through showing that, and then doing the tinkering and stuff like that, and then consulting, because I really do like consulting. So I do go to brainstorming and mastermind sessions. I get paid for that. I get paid for critiquing and get paid for consulting. I have taken a couple clients. I really am not looking for those and will probably turn you down if you call.
Right.
And I'm updating my dad's legacy, and I'm cementing it in a way that in an evergreen way. So that right now with my dad's stuff, I'm planning on doing the audio series until we run out of letters. That's, what I'm basically doing is an ongoing creating the greatest, audio series on writing for sales ever created.
Yeah. I love it. I can't wait to dive into it and listen to every single one of them. It's just, I can listen to all day long. It's
great when your list starts with Gary Benzaving and ends with Joe Sugarman, and it's got Kennedy in the middle and Gerber,
Yeah, no, I as I said, I'm going to recommend every single person listening to this go grab it. And it's, is it the Gary Halbert? Is it thegaryhalbertletter.com/stars? You can find out how to get it. You can go to thegaryhalbertletter.com and grab everything else. I'll have all the other show notes. It was, you said it was halbertizing.com.
Yes. Yes, we own the S and the Z, but the S is, and that's, if you want to get the Android version and stuff like that, it'll be moved over later. But that's usually where, when we experiment and play around with my dad's stuff, if we augment it, that's usually where we'll put stuff. So we've done, we've broken down my dad's ads and explained the hidden psychology and the, why he chose word by word, for a lot of his big masterpieces. And if we ever do anything like that, you'll find it at Halbertizing.
That's fantastic. Well, you listening to this right now, listening to myself and Bond talk about this, I hope this has been extremely helpful for you. I know it's been a trip for me. Bond has been, you've been so generous with all of these just nuggets that you picked up from, your father, from the circles of influence you've been in, and from a lot of the experience that you've just had in the trenches, putting it to the test as well. Guys, if copy and marketing are not part of your business, they should be. It's, said that the number one most important thing that any entrepreneur can do is sell their business. It's your job to sell what you've got. And whether or not you do the copywriting and the marketing from, all of it, or you have a team, it's really important to understand the principles behind it, what you're doing, how you're doing it. Even if you're only studying this stuff to recognize great world-class marketing, there is no better source than the Gary Halbert letter. He's a legend that has inspired countless of the top entrepreneurs and marketers out there, and you would be doing yourself a disservice not to dive in and just go through every single one of these. I know I have. I've read through the letters. I've read pretty much everything that I can find that, Bond's father has ever put together, and a lot of the people that he's talked about. And these are the only ways you really improve yourself, and the only ways you really up level in your business or your life is to learn from those who've gone before you. And this is definitely an instance of standing on the shoulders of giants. Go big up, the GaryHalbertLetter.com/stars. So crazy cheap. I'm looking at the price here. I'll let you guys go see how cheap it is, but I really think you're probably underpricing this, but I understand the way you're doing it.
I think it comes out to 6 cents a minute.
Right. No, it's absolutely
for
crazy.
Guys who get paid thousands an hour.
Yeah. No, it's crazy, but extremely valuable. Bond, this has been awesome. Loved having you on the show. If there's anything I can ever do for you, please let me know. And you as a listener, if you have any questions about this, if you have any advice and you've got any strategies that you'd like to send back to me, or you have any other guests that you'd like to be featured on the show, any other topics, or you just like a second opinion on your own business or marketing strategy, feel free to shoot me an email to askbrad@baconwrapbusiness.com. And I appreciate your listening. I appreciate all the 5-star reviews we're getting on iTunes. Please give us some more. And Bond, thank you very much for joining us on the call today. It's been crazy, crazy fun, and I can't wait to chat with you again sometime soon.
Thanks for having me, and thank you for the ongoing support of my father's work.
Yeah, by all means. By all means. Well, everybody else, have a great day, and we'll see you next time.